The latest business confidence index by the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry is still sitting at its highest level since 2018. That's as the sentiment measure has come in with a reading at 114.7 points in March. The same level was reported in February, reflecting a steady climate. SACCI CEO Alan Mukoki joins us now to talk us through further details. Good afternoon to you, Mukoki. Let's unpack the underlying issues behind this steady climate where business confidence is concerned, because, of course, risks do remain in the domestic economy.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon to you, to me and your listeners. I think that's what we see, but it is steady at this particular point in time. We see a level of stability. I think that people are somewhat confident. Maybe they are tired of being pessimistic, and now they want to see what is actually possible. And I think that we have a lot of opportunities in terms of things that can be done. As your previous speaker also said, the issue around load shedding seems to be promising in terms of a very positive outlook regarding what is going to happen into the future. And we've seen some improvements as well, even though we're not particularly happy at this particular point in time. But we've seen some improvements with the rail environment, at least a lot of the initiatives that business and government, Transnet, the port environment, we've been working together on. The appointment of a new partner to partner with Transnet in terms of what's going to happen with the port in Durban. And I think that all these are particularly positive moves, and they bode well for the economy going forward. There's still a long way to go, and I think that we should not necessarily delude ourselves in terms of what we see currently. Of course, you might see a dip towards May because of the election outcome uncertainty. People don't know what's going to happen. Everyone says the ruling party may well lose its majority, and that definitely would concern investors, not because they like the ruling party or not, but because they are always uncertain about what does the new arrangement look like, what would it mean. We've seen a lot of volatility around the local government coalitions, and I think that those concerns will definitely come into the data as we move forward.
On that note, speaking of the polls that we are facing next month, what's to be said about business, given the expectations that are with the challenges in the local economy, talking about load shedding? Yes, it's at lower levels, and the improvements with regards to the logistical challenges. What then becomes the expectation on a policy front where businesses are basically invested?
Well, I think that business has come a long way, at least working with the current government on trying to resolve a lot of the outstanding policy issues. We are not always going to be in agreement. The issue relating to land expropriation of that compensation has always remained one of the stumbling blocks in terms of movement forward. But there's been more agreements on quite a number of issues than disagreements. And I think that we should always take that positive approach, we as business ourselves, in terms of being more solutions-driven, and not just being solutions-driven as it relates only to our own self-interest as business, but in the interest of the general country, in the interest of all the key stakeholders, because we want to build a democracy where everyone is going to share in that particular dividend. Not because we're doing anyone a favor, but because in an environment that is stable, where everyone believes that they've got a stake, is very, very, very good for business. So in the end, it's enlightened self-interest. So we do hope that whatever arrangements coming into the future, the environment for discussion, for negotiations is always going to be there. And I think that we're very hopeful, because you have to be hopeful. You can't be an entrepreneur, and you are never going to be a risk taker in business if you actually lack the necessary optimism that must go with that. A lot of these things are about people relationships, and we can all sit together. South Africans have proven themselves over the last 30 years at least of being very capable of meeting and resolving some of the most intractable issues. I think that we should be proud of ourselves in that particular regard.
To what extent, though, are issues around the high inflation as well as elevated interest rates a concern for the business community? What have respondents said about that particular element?
Well, that's a very serious issue, because, of course, it impacts the level of investment and confidence. You don't want to see interest rates going up, inflation going up, because there's a symbiotic relationship between inflation and interest rate. They feed off each other. The monetary authorities, every time they see that money supply is heating up, they will always raise interest rates to try and protect the value of the currency. And that is not necessarily always going to be a positive outcome in an environment where there is significantly high levels of unemployment. So it tends to lead us more toward an area where we support the fire sector with economic policies and monetary policies that we take. And by fire sector, I mean the finance, insurance, real estate, people who are issuing bonds for people to build their own houses, whether it's residence, commercial or industrial property. But that money does not itself end up in the more productive economy where we're actually producing things and we're selling things. So that's an area where South Africa needs to complete its own debate in terms of what does it actually mean. Does inflation tempering have to come at the expense of any job creation? Because if you increase interest rates, I'm borrowing money to run my business, I'm borrowing $1 million, 2 million or 5 million. Suddenly my interest rate is now costing me more money than I'm able to make in terms of my revenue. It's going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact in me stopping growing because I'm not able to sell more things to people, because when people don't have money because they're paying more for their, what I mean by fire sector, finance and insurance, you now start to pay more for your bond, you're paying more for your installment credit facility, whether it's over your furniture, whether it's over your house. You no longer now have the disposable income that you would have deployed to fund the economy to go further. You have more restaurant visits, less restaurant visits. You're buying less clothes. You're keeping the clothes that you had last winter. But if you had the money, every winter you're changing your clothes, and that's fueling and driving the economy and increasing the jobs. So it's a very, very serious issue that South Africa, I don't think at this particular point in time, we've had an honest discussion in terms of the role of the central bank and how can we get to a point where we can balance these two things. For instance, the U.S. Federal Reserve has got a dual mandate. In other words, full employment plus protect the value of money. Our own Reserve Bank only has one single mandate, protect the value of money in terms of inflation. So we do need to have that particular urgent debate so that we can move forward with resilience and with speed and with confidence.
As we wrap up, steady is what we can take at this point and maybe good enough. But the near-term outlook for business confidence, as you highlighted, the remaining risks to the economic activity in South Africa, as well as the elections next month.
Well, we have to go through the first hurdle, which is the political stability in terms of what happens post-May to end up with a coalition and what kind of coalition partners are. It could set us back in terms of having new people that we've never dealt with, we've never done any work with at NetLec, we've never agreed any policy with them, we haven't agreed what the minimum wage is, we haven't agreed what any of the other legislative and regulatory pieces are. It could set South Africa back probably 2, maybe even 3 years. But if it's the same parties and we're not necessarily angling or voting for any party, but if it's the same usual people that you're used to dealing business with, or whose policies are very clearly defined and you know what they are, then that makes life easy. And I think that if you get to that level of stability politically, but I do think if you look at most of the political parties, there's a level of pragmatism in terms of how they've handled themselves, in terms of what you hear in the campaigning. They themselves, we may differ sometimes on certain ideological outlooks, but they themselves are as concerned about exactly the same things that we're concerned with: economic growth, job creation, and building a South Africa that would end up being a developed economy so that we can resolve the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And I think that you'll find that that's a common theme amongst all the political parties. The how-to would only be that particular challenge. So medium term, I think that we have to be very positive. There are lots of opportunities. Sometimes as South Africans, we tend to be very negative about our own country, but there are more opportunities. We haven't even touched the surface when it comes to the beneficiation of our own minerals, both on the minerals as well as the agri sector. We haven't done the industrialization that we have, yet we've got a huge number of people with skills and competencies and a lot of positive energy, and people are looking up to South Africa. The region itself is something that we've not touched. So I think that we need to be very positive and we need to be solutions-driven. Stop complaining so much. Of course, it's nice to complain, but can we complain for a change maybe in 2024 and beyond with clear solutions that are very pragmatic and practical in terms of things that we can do together, and stop relying too much on government. I don't think that the people in government have got skills that are so big that they can solve all the problems, but we all need to work together. We need to have a South Africanism that's driving our purpose so that we work together as a team. Everyone that has got a skill and a contribution to make should come into the ring and stop throwing stones from outside.
Pragmatism, you say. We'll take it. Alan Mukoki is the CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry.